years, Mick McAndrews ran away from his Glasgow home and spent 2 years living rough on Euston Station in London. Drugs and alcohol were an everyday part of his life until the shock of his father's death took him back to Scotland. It was there that he made the decision to turn his life around. With the support of the local church, he began to study, and in what now seems a world apart, he's reading for a degree in psychology at Oxford Brookes University.
For 2 years, this was my home, and in that time, I lived in the confines of this park, sometimes sleeping on the bench here. And some of the better evenings, when the grass was a bit dry, I would lie here or over on the other side. You know, you'd have the cheek to ask somebody for the price of a cup of tea with a can of lager in your hand. I would undress every night as if I was going to my bed, and every morning when I would get up, I would just get dressed here at 7:30 in the morning in front of everybody that's passed by. I think my idea of God here sort of crumbled, you know. It was been brought up a Catholic. It was always, you know, they were always talking about the poor, you know, help the poor, and you know, and here was I sitting here poor, and nobody was helping me, you know, and people were passing by and they were just looking at you with a lot of people with disgust. I think sometimes it was bad enough being here without other people sort of coming up and rubbing your nose in it. I remember phoning home and finding out that my father had died the day before. I felt at that time as if my whole world had collapsed. I remember going into the room, and when he was lying in the room and in the coffin, and I remember looking at him and, you know, and thinking, you know, my father was quite young, he was 57 when he died, and I thought that, you know, I'd be lucky to reach 57 if I carried on doing what I was doing. There was no way I'd get by 30. And I think then, through that experience, I made the decision to do something that I knew that I couldn't go on doing what I was doing. Through the help of a day centre in Glasgow, I was referred to a rehabilitation centre. I realised that one of the main causes of my life being so dysfunctional was because I used drugs. It wasn't because my mammy drank or because my daddy drank. It was because I drank and because I took drugs. That was why my life was in such a state. And I could no longer blame other people. I moved into a hostel in Glasgow that was run by the Salvation Army, and just round the corner from it there was a Catholic church. And I went along one Sunday morning to a service, and the final hymn that day was Amazing Grace. And in the first verse, every word sort of seemed to ring through, you know, that especially about being blind, you know, and then being able to see. I started to realise that I had been blind, you know, I'd been blind to what was going on round about me. And at the end of the hymn, I was sitting in church crying, you know, thinking about the, you know, that, you know, I believed that I was home. When I sorted out my drug problem and the alcohol problem, I received some leaflets about a college in Oxford that was offering places for people who were not qualified at all. The college was called Plater. I filled the forms out and was successful in getting a place to study for a diploma in social administration. I found student life to be very difficult to begin with. The discipline in having to sit down and read a book and write an essay and sit in a lecture and try and take in what was being said. And after a year, I sat the exam, very nervous. And that day, walking down the hall was enough, you know, just walking down there, and everybody knew you were going to the examination schools because you were dressed up like a penguin with a black suit and a white bow tie and a big flower, you know, and thought it was the bee's knees.
Mick McAndrews, you said in the film that when you went for your examination in Oxford, you felt like the bee's knees. What were you like when you were living in Euston?
When I was in Euston, I had my hair was halfway down my back. My teeth were in very bad condition. There was a lot of them missing at the front, and I had a beard probably down to about here. So overall, pretty disgusting from in all respects of that word. Yeah.
But it's a world away where you are now from where you were when you were living at Euston. A completely different world. What would you have thought if someone had come to your bench and said to you, Mick, one day you'll be studying in Oxford?
I would have laughed, you know. There was no way that I could have believed something like that. It would have been too, for me, it would have been too radical. It would have been too much of a leap to go for, you know, for that to that, you know. I see the last 3 or 4 years of my life has been a lot of small steps moving across, you know, different things happening that have led to other things, you know, and just had a bit of faith and just carried on with what you were doing, even though maybe it might have been a bit mundane, you know, kept going and hung in, and, you know, and it led to something else, and something else led to, and the consequences I've ended up in Oxford. And some people look for to see this big, they expect you to talk about this big flash of light that happened one night, or, you know, you just sort of wakened up and became, you know, renewed, and, you know, and that was it, you set off in life again, you know. And for me, it's not really been like that. It's been lots and lots of small steps, you know, and it's been building up, you know, laying a good foundation to then, so that at least if things do fall away, you can still go back to the foundation that has been there, that has been built. And
you were talking in the film about the fact that when you went to church, you felt as though you had come home. Is that part of this foundation that you're talking about?
Within the church, not only finding God again and finding that and finding my faith, you know, I found a group of people who care about me, you know, which in the beginning was very difficult to accept, that somebody cared about me, you know, that somebody would think about me, you know, and that all this stuff was new, you know, it was different to, you know, when you'd spent so long, people walking by, not even bidding you good morning or nothing, you know, it's quite a turnaround to then have people, you know, having a bit of interest in what you're doing and asking if you're okay and meaning it. You know, it's nice to, sometimes people can say, you know, how are you? And you know they really don't mean it, but, you know, when these people were asking, you knew they meant it.
What about this new life in Oxford? I mean, do you tell people about your past life? Do you tell them what you were?
I think it's important to tell people. I think it's important to as an example to other people that it is possible to be in that position in life and to pick yourself back up, you know, and build a new life and get things back together again, and, you know, and become an acceptable and responsible member of society once again.
But where did the strength come to do that?
The strength for doing that, I believe, is from God. That I don't believe that there is a human power that could make me do that, you know, and trust that that things are going to be okay, you know.
What about looking back from where you are now? When you look back, do you ever say to yourself, how did I ever get like that? Many of the times I can look back, you know, and many of the times I still look back and think, you know, why did, you know, and I believe that I learnt how to do that, you know, I learnt how to live like that, I learnt, and just in the same way that I've had to relearn how to live my life today. And having escaped, is it an escape for all time? Will you ever go back to where you were? That's too much to say, you know. I'm 30 years of age at the moment. I could live for another 40 years, and to sit and say that I would never go back there and is too much to cope with. It's easier just to take it in small chunks at a time, which is, for the day, I'm not going back. I'm not going back today, and that's the main thing. Mick McAndrews, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you.